Greetings, fellow action figure connoisseurs, and welcome to another episode of Digital Caveman Presents Masters of the Universe Tuesday. I, as always, am your host, the Digital Caveman, and today I will be presenting you with my Masters of the Universe Top 10 of 2023. Let's get into it! This year's honorable mention goes to Sunman from the Masters of the Universe Masterverse Rulers of the Sun subline. I just have to say, the deco on this guy is great looking. The wings could have been a little better. I think he probably would have been higher up the list had the wings been better. But at least he doesn't have those clip around the neck wings like the Origins Rulers of the Sun Sunman did. And I like the fact that he has, the shield with the nice deco on it. And also I'm not sure what you would call his bladed weapon, but it is definitely distinctive. And I haven't seen anything like that before. So here we go. Honorable mention to Sunman from the Masterverse Rulers of the Sun subline. In the number 10 position, we have the Masterverse New Eternia subline Deluxe Ram Man. And the sculpt on this guy is phenomenal. And the paint and the wash, and he just looks really, really great. And he probably would have been higher on the list, except for a couple of things. And they're not major things, but in the future they might end up being major things. One of the things that threw me off with this figure was the rubber overlay for the legs. And while it looks great, I think over time we're going to see some degradation to that overlay. And the other thing, and this isn't really an issue, it's just I wish he would have had some sort of clip or storage on his back for his axe. And, those two things, to me, had they been, I won't say rectified, but if they had been different, maybe solid legs and a clip for the axe, or some type of storage on his back for the axe, he definitely would have been higher than number 10. But there he is, Masterverse New Eternia Deluxe Ram Man. Here's my number 9 pick for Masters of the Universe this year. The Masterverse Revelation subline Horde Skeletor. And I'm not a super fan of what they did with the soft goods here. The cloak, it can be a bit stiff, but the colors on this guy, the Horde belt, the, I guess, magic effect on the head of the Havoc staff there, the way that it's colored, and just the head sculpt for this Revelation Skeletor is great. I wish there was a way just to get this head to fit the Revelation Skeletor, the first issue Revelation Skeletor. But really what won me over on this guy is that head sculpt combined with the colors, and to me this is just a really great looking figure. That's number 9. Masters of the Universe, Masterverse, Revelation, Horde Skeletor. Here's my number 8 pick for Masters of the Universe, the Masterverse New Eternia Deluxe 2-Bad. And I have to say, this is kind of the 2-Bad that I always wanted 2-Bad to be when I was a kid. Tons of weapons, great articulation. I mean, you know, the original had that kind of bear hug type spring arm action, which was kind of cool. But I would have much preferred him to have arms more like the rest of the line back in the day. And don't get me wrong, I would still play with the heck out of him. But I think this is the best version of 2-Bad that Mattel has ever made. And that's why he makes number 8 on my list for Masters of the Universe. The Masterverse New Eternia Deluxe 2-Bad. Here's my number 7 pick for Masters of the Universe for the year. The Masterverse New Eternia Buzz-Off, who was not a deluxe figure. He was a basic line figure. And I have to say, this one just looks really cool. I like the way they gave his helmet or mask, whatever you want to call it, you know, kind of that translucent plastic that gives it a kind of an energy feel. Kind of like the wings, even though the wings aren't made of energy, but you can see, you know, it's got some designs in there that makes them look more technological, maybe, in some places. But we know they're all supposed to be like natural, like bees. But the only issue I have with the helmet is it kind of makes him look more ant-like than bee-like. And while the harness is okay, I don't particularly care for it. Again, it's okay. And it does add to the figure. It's just sometimes a bit of a pain to mess with. So, otherwise he probably would have been higher up on the list. But here he is, number 7, the Masterverse New Eternia Buzz-Off. Here we have my number 6 pick for Masters of the Universe for the year. The Masterverse Revelation Merman, the armored version from like the pre-Magic Dying or whatever you want to call that phase, the first part of it. And I have to say, there are a lot of classic elements on this guy, and there's, you know, it's like they took those classic pieces and elevated them or modernized them, made them more detailed, I guess, especially with this armor. And I think this is a really, really cool look for Merman. I definitely like this better than the first Revelation Merman that we got without the armor and stuff. I do think this one is much, much cooler. And, you know, it partially it harkens back to, you know, it gives me the nostalgias for that original figure. Now, as you can see on mine as he's rotating around, the little jewel on the chest piece of his armor is a little bit misplaced. It was glued and then maybe it moved while it was going down the line. But I do really like the chitness look of the armor. It looks like some sort of crab or something that he made the armor out of. And then his sword, it actually doesn't look like a corn cob. It looks like it was grown from coral on, of course, that bone handle. And again, I just, I think he's really cool. And I think he's a nice modernization of the classic character. Of course, he has the seaweed for his shorts rather than fur, which fur on an underwater dude didn't, it didn't really make sense, but that was the mold that they used. So there it is. But again, number 6, the Masterverse Revelation Armored Merman. Here's my number 5 Masters of the Universe pick for the year. The Masterverse New Adventures of He-Man Skeletor. And I don't really know a lot about New Adventures of He-Man. I didn't watch it. I didn't collect the toy line as a child. In fact, it was, after my first stint of toy collecting, you might call it. But I really like the head sculpt on this Skeletor, and then when you pull his helmet off, how it kind of has that look where the flesh of the face kind of melted back from the skull. I like the colors. I really, really like the Havoc staff. It's cool with the blade on the bottom of it, and then it looks like it shoots electricity out of the top of it, and maybe laser beams out of the eyeballs. And I realize it's a skull rather than a ram's skull. It's more like human skull. But it's just really cool looking. And it's pretty much standard Skeletor colors as far as I can tell. I'm colorblind, so don't make fun of handicapped people. The only drawbacks and the only things that kept this guy from being a little higher on the list were, I really feel like at this point these capes should be wired, and I understand that it's probably a safety thing that they can't do it, but these figures really need it. And I really feel like he could have used some more paint apps for the little bits and bobs, the greeble that's all over his back and his chest and his arms and stuff, like the wires and the mechanical bits. I think, a few more paint apps on this guy would have been really, really great. And barring that, maybe even a wash to just kind of help those parts stand out a little more, to show that this isn't, this is not the Skeletor we're familiar with. He is upgraded himself, so to speak. But there he is, my friends. Number 5 from Masters of the Universe for me for the year. The New Adventures of He-Man Skeletor. Here's my number 4 Masters of the Universe pick for the year. The new Eternia Faker. And I have to say, it's not that I don't like that original Faker that Masterverse did, the Revelation Faker. It's a nice Faker, and it's nice to, have like the robot parts showing, and the fact that he was actually, not Skeletor colors, but he was actual He-Man colors. It, gave credence to the illusion that he was supposed to be He-Man. Well, this one is a little bit different. Skeletor created him to help him harness the power of Grayskull. And, the head sculpt on this one is really, really nice. And it does say, it kind of lends itself toward a Filmation style He-Man, except for maybe the expression on his face. But it really takes me back to that. I like the colors. I like his battle axe, where it looks like it's been broken and repaired. I like the wash on the sword. The only thing I don't like about the sword is like the hand guard that it has on it. But it harkens back to those original Masters of the Universe figures. And one of the most important things, and you can't see it here, is the fact that he has like the tape recorder deal in his chest, which on the original figure was just a sticker, and this time it is molded and painted, and it looks really nice. And the only other thing is, I kind of wish they had updated the armor and not used, I think this is the Barbarian Skeletor harness, chest harness, and you know, I wish they would have done a new one to kind of, I think it would have gone better with this guy, maybe with the straps a little lower and the chest piece coming down a little further. But this is the way they made it for us, and I'm fine with it. I'm fine enough with it to make him number 4 for my Masters of the Universe for the year. The Masterverse New Eternia Faker. Here, my friends, is my number 3 pick for Masters of the Universe for the year. The Masterverse Mattel Creations Vicron. And I have to say, this is a really cool dude, and you could make him 3 ways. Although I do like the Space Ace type armor. The Barbarian look really wins it out for me. And I don't know, I might be able to use the Space Ace on something else. I'm not sure yet. Now the head cannon thing, just for some reason it reminds me of the Road Ripper, just the way that the head part of it, the helmet looks. And you know, I never really got the, you know, guns on the side of your head, you're gonna lose your hearing. But you know, really for Vicron, it's more like a trophy. These things are trophies for him. But I really dug this dude. And from the Mattel Creations that I reviewed this year, also Motherboard almost made it. And even Dark Lyn almost made it, just because they are great figures. You know, I'm not necessarily fond of their role in, well, at least Dark Lyn's, I'm not really all that happy with the way that they portrayed Evil Lyn in Revelation at certain points. But, you know, I'm not reviewing the show, I'm reviewing figures, and they just barely missed the cut on making the list, really. And Motherboard was much closer to being on the list than Dark Lyn. But again, both of them were great figures. This one is a really fantastic figure, and that's why he's number 3. The Mattel Creations Masterverse Vicron. Here, my friends, is my number 2 pick for Masters of the Universe for the year. And you just don't know how close this one came to being number 1. It was so close. But let's talk about this one. My number 2 Masters of the Universe pick for the year is the Masterverse 1987 Masters of the Universe movie Skeletor. And the sculpt on this one is fantastic. The deco on this is fantastic. And I think the face on it, it literally, to me, looks like Skeletor from the movie. I mean, it is very, if it's not exact, it's close, at least to me, and the way that I remember it. And you know, the cape, even though it's not wired, you guys know, if you watch reviews that I do with guys with cloth capes with no wire in them, you know, I harp on that a lot. But even though this one doesn't have the wire in it for posability, it does lay very well with this figure just being in a static pose. So, kudos for that. Now, the material might be a little thin because, as you can see now, you can see through it as he's rotating here. But, you know, the sculpt, the deco, his sword is awesome. The Havoc staff is really, really cool. And I just, when I look at this guy, I hear that, like, the first shot we get of Skeletor out of the movie where he's banging the Havoc staff on the floor of Grayskull as he's walking down to confront the sorceress. And, you know, it just is a really awesome figure. I really like it. It is my number 2 pick for the year for Masters of the Universe. The Masterverse 1987 movie Skeletor. Here he is, my friend, the moment you've all been waiting for. My number 1 Masters of the Universe pick for the year is the Masterverse New Eternia Man-E-Faces. And while this guy has a lot of classic elements in it, it is, you know, not, I won't say it's super updated or super modernly updated, but it's the same enough and different enough, at least for me. I love the fact that his gun is very reminiscent of the original figure. The deco on this guy is great. The sculpting is really good. I do like the accessories. The fact that not only does he have 3 faces in the helmet, which you can spin to change out. Of course, you do have to pull the helmet off in order to change those, or at least I do on mine. But in addition to those 3, he also has 3 more in his traveling case that you can swap out. And those are really cool too. And I think that really is what put this guy over the top for me. I'm not the biggest fan of Man-E-Face, at least that's how he was presented in the Filmation cartoon. Him being an actor, you know, that makes sense because I think he was an actor in the original mini comic who, you know, was in a traveling like a fair, and before Skeletor got a hold of him and turned him into a monster, and then He-Man and Skeletor were fighting and He-Man trying to turn him back human. Skeletor wanted to keep him a monster, and they ended up making the robot persona. But I really, really like this version of Man-E-Faces. I think this finally does the character the justice that he was always due as a figure. And again, like I said, there are a lot of classic elements in this, and you know, that really is what the New Eternia stuff is all about, is really putting those classic elements into the figure and then kind of updating him or adding features from concept art and stuff like that. And I really think this one is classic with a few modifications, and it was enough for me to pick this figure as my number 1 Masters of the Universe figure for the year, the New Eternia Man-E-Faces. That completes my Masters of the Universe top 10 of 2023, plus honorable mention. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. Only support from viewers like you make this programming possible. Each view does count, and I do appreciate each and every single view that I receive. Thank you, and thank you so very, very much for supporting this channel through viewing. Comment below, like, share, subscribe if you'd like to see more reviews or just help the channel out further, or both, that's even better. And don't forget to ding that bell so that in the future you will be notified as my new content becomes available. That's a wrap, folks. I'll see you next time.